We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
Swinging a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup for the lead. Yes!
Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Well, welcome in, Joey, episode 196 of Drunk on the Birds.
Beautiful.
Oh, man, it's a busy week. It's a busy week in Philadelphia sports where I don't know if I have collected my thoughts from last night's epic debacle in Madison Square Garden, where I literally feel like I lost my sports soul in the span of like 27.8 seconds. And all the retribution of the accounts of the missed calls don't really do me any kind of justice for anything because it doesn't really change the outcome or the result. Yeah, we got the Phillies. The Phillies are on a little bit of a heater, and it looks like they're cooling off tonight. But we're on here talking all things NFL draft this week because Thursday night is it's the next piece of the Howie season.
That's right. We love how
we've seen a really, really productive, busy offseason this summer. This winter looking for them to really reshape and rebuild this roster. The offense looks all parts considered, to be lock, stock, and ready to go with the offensive weapons, the best offensive line, I would argue, in football. You got, you add probably the best offensive weapon in Saquon Barkley. You pair him with A.J. Brown and, the newly minted Devontae Smith with his extension. And, you got Dallas Goedert, and you got Jalen Hurts, and it goes on and on. On defense, there's a couple of question marks on defense, but Joe, we've talked on here before. It legit looks like they're going to try to just put up as many points as humanly possible, and just say stop. Like all we got to do is stop you once. So, looking forward to talking all things draft. Draft is it's a fond memory for me. This is I don't know if my pop is out there chiming in and listening, but he and I used to be an April tradition for our family. We were he and I would, we'd bust out the Daily News and the Inquirer, have the draft spreads out all over the coffee table, kitchen table. And we would just go back and forth with, who's picking where and what guy's coming off where. And this guy went to this team, and just always a cool thing. And this is, this is going to span it's always right around my birthday, which is always a cool thing to, kind of share with. It's just, it's a good time to see where the next stages of this team will come from. We've seen a lot of guys come out of the SEC, a lot of Georgia, a lot of Alabama. Curious if they go back in that department. There's some talk of some small school guys coming in for visits. I'm curious to see, Joe, what are your thoughts going into the draft on at the end of this week?
Well, yeah, I mean, You've heard rumblings on offense and defense in the first round. Offensive line or secondary, mainly some of these guys, these corners that are going to be available. We're sitting there at pick 22. I've heard a lot of people say they don't really think that they're going to pick at 22. We've heard some news come out the last day or two about how he's might be trying to cook something up to move up. And the rumor is he's trying to move up for a corner. Now we don't. I don't know if that's absolutely the case. If he's just doing that for smoke and mirrors, or just trying to, divert people's attention. But obviously, corner is absolutely a need. You have Bradbury, who fell off a cliff last year, who was unplayable, and a good amount of these games. He only played because he kind of had to play, but
you're not lying on that.
no, and it's just a matter of, with the track record of the Eagles and what they've taken in the first round, it's it remains to be seen if they would make that move and go after a corner, which I would be totally on board with. You're gonna take that cap hit with the whole Bradbury situation, but you can make that a post June thing. So I'm totally on board with the corner. Offensive line, yes and no. I don't know. I can't see, me personally, just in my opinion, I can't see them going after a first round offensive lineman if he's not going to play right away.
So here's my thought, Joe. If it all depends on how, and we'll start with offensive line, right? Because there are some guys that are going to fall in that mid-20s that are plug and play guys, right? There's the kid from Washington, can't remember his name, and then the guy out of Kansas State, Cooper Beebe, right? They're just big monster guys that are plug and play guys. The key with this is how much do they actually believe in Tyler Steen? If they really believe that Tyler Steen is a step in, plug and play, is going to, they're going to slide Cam Jurgens, they're going to put him in, and they're not going to miss a beat, then I think they go somewhere else. I think they go edge or corner.
Right.
If they're not sold on him, and there's a guy there, like if they see Cooper Beebe and they know that we can draft this dude is going to start day one, and we're going to plug and play, and we are just going to not worry about that position for the next 6 years. If you guys, because he fits the mold and looks the part, kind of like Landon Dickerson, right? Young, big, athletic, seasoned, can play both sides of the center, can play right or left guard. It wouldn't surprise me. That's where they build this team. They build this team through the interior. So it would not surprise me if this first pick is offensive line, defensive line. But if it's offensive line, that's got to be a guy that they truly believe, that they, one, don't believe in Tyler Steen, but two, that they really believe that guy is going to step in and play day one. Because some of their guys that they've drafted on defense in the last couple of years, some of them have had more success than others. But you're really looking at, you've got to get really good production out of that pick, because you can't have a situation like you had with Nolan Smith last year where you really basically, got, a pass year. You got a hall pass on that year because, he got little to no minutes. Now there's going to be extra time for him, with the move on from Hassan Reddick. I don't know. I'm okay either way. I'm okay if they go, if they believe in a guy, I'm good there. Your heart of hearts, Joe, they stay. What are the chances they stay at 22?
0.
I'm right there with you.
0, because they're gonna see the way that the draft is going. If there's a run on a position, and they really want a guy, and it's not going to cost them a ridiculous amount to move up two spots, 3 spots, 4 spots. They're primed, and they have the the draft capital to make it happen. So I can't see, because their track record of picking at that number and in the later part of the first round has been awful. So I think Howie is gonna do whatever he can to jump up. Me personally, I'm okay with. I'm more leaning toward defense. I mean, like you said, unless a guy that they really like and they really want kind of falls in their lap, or he's just a couple picks away and they can move up for him, I'm really interested in them going after a defensive end.
I'm gonna give you a guy, Joe, because I got a guy that fits that mold. A guy that could fall, that could slide, that they would absolutely, I feel like, not hesitate to make a move on.
I think I think there's two. I think there's two from what I've seen. There's two. There could be more, but two that I know of that I've heard about that are first round worthy. Defense. You talking about defensive end?
I'm talking about offense. I'm talking about a guy on offense.
Oh boy!
I'm talking about a guy on offense.
In the first round?
In the first round. An offensive weapon.
I think I know where you're going with this.
If Brock Bowers.
Yeah, Brock. Yep.
If Brock Bowers slides into the teens, it would not surprise me at all if Howie's like, here you go. And just and slide up, to slide up from 22 to like 17, 16, in that range where it wouldn't be a reach, but they see the value in that. And this is right. Dallas Goedert's approaching 30. Yep. This is right about the time when the Eagles drafted Dallas Goedert, when Zach Ertz was right about 30. It would fit that MO. It's early to pick him, right? But now you're talking about the only thing that would make me hesitant is there's only one ball.
Right.
And how do you get value out of that position when you've already got the offensive weapons? How do you make that first round investment in a guy that, yes, is going to pay dividends down the line, but it would allow Kellen Moore to be wildly creative with the formations.
Sure.
And if you're talking about putting a set out there with, imagine a set where you have Devontae Smith and AJ Brown on either end. You got Brock Bowers and Dallas Goedert in essentially in the inside slots. You got Saquon Barkley in the backfield.
Disgusting.
Like who are you guarding?
Yeah.
Like everybody. It's the kind of thing. It would allow you to be crazy dynamic, but that's a guy. If a guy slid, that would be the guy. Now on defense, because defense is where we really want to try to take a focus. Who's your guy on defense? Who's the slide guy that you think they might make a move on?
Well, I've seen a lot of tape on this guy, and it really comes down to a medical thing. It's going to come down to if he's actually really truly healthy, and they don't have to worry about his medical history or his past, and if that's going to come back while he's a pro. Is I might say his name Laitu, the defensive end from UCLA.
UCLA.
Yeah, so he's he's on my board, and I like Verse from Florida State.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Florida State. So, but that's a
Listen, Joe.
guy.
Both of those guys could
Yeah.
probably be in play for you at even at 22.
Yeah.
Letu is a guy that you could slide, like you're saying, with there is some medical stuff. But when you talk about his ability to be able to get to the quarterback and being athletic on the edge in space, I mean, I'm looking at some statistics right now, like just last season, 55 pressures and 13 sacks.
Yeah.
Really, really productive guy on the edge. I like where I would love that. I would love that from an athletic point of view. In that same position, right? If you're talking about edge outside, and trying to maybe replace the pass rush and the pressures that you might get from the loss of Hassan Reddick. A guy like Chop Robinson is a guy that I would love to keep in the state of Pennsylvania. I think you could get some wild production with him coming off the edge. And you just add them to the stable of guys that could be. You're going to need to get pressure on a quarterback. With the way that their defense and their defensive backfield is right now. When you talk about as of today, right? The depth chart really dictates the fact that like you're looking at running James Bradbury and Darius Slay back out there. I think you're going to be in a position where you're going to have to get pressure on a quarterback. You are getting the Isaiah Rodgers news comes out that he gets the reinstatement today. And Joe, you were mentioning pre-show that the pretty funny the video of him
But he walked
that
up.
that was circulating online.
Yeah. I'm back.
Going up to his ring camera.
Right. Yeah.
But I really I'm curious to see how they address, because they're going to have four in the first, or three picks in the first 55.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to see how they choose to address that, right? Because even in the defensive backfield, right? You add CJ GJ back, but you're still gonna have some combination of Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown. That is absolutely a spot where you could see an upgrade. The guy I love, and I'm really convinced that he's probably got the coolest fucking name in the draft. A dude from Alabama, Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Yes.
But he's another guy. He's another guy that brings a lot of experience, a lot of big time SEC. He would fit that SEC mold, right? They've gone back to that well now, 3-4 years in a row. Jared Verse is another guy, in that same, kind of Josh Sweat-ish mold. He had, if I'm looking he had 50 QB pressures last season. That would be another guy to bring in. But yeah, I think is there a guy, Joe, that you're like totally out on? Is there a guy like that you're like, stay away?
I think the latest report that I saw today was this corner from Toledo.
Oh, okay. Quinion Mitchell.
Yeah, I didn't want to chop up his name. I mean, he might be the best or the second best on the board, but I worry about the level of competition.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a fair question to ask when. I mean, I don't even know what conference that is.
So that's a MAC.
It's the MAC, and I don't like what.
Toledo's in the MAC.
What kind of receivers is he going against? Are these guys?
Mm-hmm.
NFL draft worthy? Like, are these guys, is he just a really good player or just a good player in an awful conference? It's something that you have to ask yourself that question. Is like the rumor is that they wanted to move up into the low teens possibly for this guy, and
Mhm.
is it a reach? Is it a reach for a guy who doesn't necessarily play at like an LSU or a Clemson or an Alabama, or playing against top
Mhm.
tier competition is huge in my book.
Yeah, no, listen, now I'm going to give you some measurables because the measurables I like. Listen, the measurables are what they are, right? They're they're there to tell a story. You're talking about a guy who's 6 feet, just just under 200 pounds, ran a 40 and 4.3, Joe. So he's fast. So he's gonna, his ability to be able to, get to the ball, break, the pass breakup ability, right? You're talking about a guy who's physically gifted. Um, I understand where you're coming from because there's a lot of burns that come out of the small conferences. For every small conference guy though, Joe, that burns you, you do have guys that you've got, and by no means am I saying that this is an equivalent, right? But like Randy Moss also played in the MAC, right?
True.
There are guys that come out of those small that just for whatever reason never got picked up by the big schools, and they end up playing really well. I like the fact that he it, he can attack the pass from both sides, right? Not only from the pass breakup because he's got a lot. The statistics will show you that he's got a lot of pass breakups, but that he's also a solid tackler too.
Mhm.
So that I think it brings a certain level of toughness to that defensive backfield, something that you don't get from guys like Bradbury and Slay,
Right.
which are guys that, for all intents and purposes, Joe, avoid tackling at all costs.
Yeah. Very
Um,
true.
so he's not a guy that I would be opposed to. I because I do like the measurables, but I understand where your concern is. Talk to me about Cooper DeJean.
Cooper DeJean. I mean, that's the $1 billion question.
The
He's
great
played
white hope.
against. Yeah, yeah. Is he better than Reed Blankenship? then we might be on. Then we might be on to something.
Yeah.
He's like they've been labeled him as the Swiss Army knife. I can't quote his 40 time right off the bat, but he's
I'm
I
gonna look
think
it up for you, Joe.
he's fast enough to play the position. He can play corner and safety. And I think he does have some return ability as well, but
Mhm.
he has good size. He loves the tackle. He's all over the field. You just it's you say this about any college player gonna get drafted, go to the NFL. How does that translate over to the NFL?
Mhm.
And what is he? Is he a corner? Is he a safety? Is he a day one starter? In the first round, and especially if they move up into the top 20, I want a guy who's going to come in and he's going to play day one. I
Yeah,
don't.
to me that's you're right. To me, the guy that they pick, that first pick, that's got to be a guy that is coming in and is going to contribute right away. Um, I love the fact that he is explosive, athletic. You're going to see a guy who makes tackles, but also makes like instinctive plays where he's reading, maybe undercuts a ball and maybe,
Right.
and has the ability to be able to create turnovers. Um, the thing that that I worry about is, the deep routes, right? Because he's a smaller guy, right? He's in that he's in that same kind of mold as Quinion Mitchell, right? Right around 6 feet, right around 200 pounds. So the thing that worries me is, you're going to see some bigger bodied receivers, especially in this conference, right? Even though, there are guys that will give you trouble in Dallas. There are guys that are going to give you trouble now in Washington. I'm looking at guys that can be athletic, can be versatile, but also be physically aggressive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Gene. I mean, I wouldn't be upset with the pick, but I mean, whatever players they have on their board at whatever position they're looking at, they have to make an impact immediately. Starters or spot starters, but whenever they do play, you have to know that they're on the field.
Absolutely. What do you got for me in terms of, do you have a guy, Joe? Let's talk about the guys maybe not in the first. So let's just talk NFL draft in general before we move on to like some later round stuff. The infatuation with the quarterbacks at the top of this draft, I don't get at all. There are guys to me, right? Caleb Williams, the guy that's at the top, that's the consensus number 1 overall to the Bears. There's chatter, Joe, that you could have the first 5 picks all be quarterbacks.
It's terrible.
That to me is just like screams of like wild desperation.
Yeah.
And, and teams are desperate to get that guy in their building. They're now, with the way that the salary cap structured, they can get out of those contracts without it crushing them for the next 5 years. But I'm looking at, Jaden Daniels is a guy that, like, to me is the clear cut number 2 guy. He's a guy that, I would, if it were me in Washington, that would be the guy that I would go right to. There's now talk with JJ McCarthy, with Drake May, with Michael Penix Jr. Like I'm looking at that going, all right, why?
Yeah. Desperation. These teams have little to no quarterbacking as it is right now, so they're just, there's so many teams that they're desperate, and they'll do anything and everything to get to get a quarterback and hope that they and in hopes that they hit. But it's so watered down, and I just, like you said, I just don't see it other than Caleb Williams. I mean, Caleb Williams is far and away the best option that's available out there. You hope that, I mean, the Bears are probably going to take. He's going to go to the Bears, but you hope that he doesn't go there and die. Because it's Chicago, and you hope you get the best version of him because what are they? I mean, they've made a lot of moves, and they've surrounded him with an immense amount of talent. But then, then again, it's still Chicago. So, it remains to be seen. But Caleb Williams is the clear cut option when it comes to the quarterback position.
Yeah, listen, you're talking about Drake May, right? And the one that I'm looking at has, the 4 out of the first 5 in this ESPN mock draft are all quarterbacks, right? They got Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2, Drake May to the Patriots 3. And then they got Minnesota taking JJ McCarthy at 5. Right? They got, that to me, the JJ McCarthy love is something I just don't get at all.
System quarterback.
When you look at the system that they ran in Michigan,
Yep.
and look at that. Was that the Penn State game, Joe, where they ran the ball the entire second half?
Yeah.
I don't think he threw a single
Nope.
pass. That to me has got to be a red flag that says, like, if we don't now listen, I'll go back to something I love. He's got the measurables, right? He's got the measurables to say I'm an NFL quarterback. But when I look at what he does from a production standpoint, to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Not at all. Just crazy stuff.
Why?
I don't get the love, but I'm sure that there's going to be a bunch of trades. I'm sure that there's going to be, is there a team out there, Joe, that, I'm curious to see what the Giants do at 6. I'm sure they'll do something fucking wildly stupid. Like, who knows, draft another quarterback. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all. What are you looking for in terms of how the draft plays out? What is your ideal plan for how it plays out for the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the quarterbacks that are available, I guess the further that they drop, the better for the Eagles. And that might sound, because then it's like the teams that really want a quarterback or need a quarterback that feel like they're too far away. If a guy drops a couple spots or two, three or four spots, and they're and the Eagle, they want to move up, and we can help them out. I mean, I'm all in on that. I mean, it's really going to come down to how desperate is the team, because everybody that doesn't have a quarterback is just that they'll do whatever they have to do, and even go overboard to try to land the guy. Some of these teams that are and the teens picking in the teens that aren't happy with their quarterback situation, or they're really sold on the guy, they're gonna find out what it's gonna take to move up, and they're gonna make it happen.
All right, Joe. I'm gonna share the screen. I'm gonna put you on the clock. With our I got the mock draft. I'm pulling up the mock draft simulator.
Let's do it.
I'm gonna put you in Howie's seat. We're gonna run we'll run it all the way to the Eagles pick, and we'll see how it plays out. So let's do this. Let's take this off here. Let's enter the draft. And let's start the draft.
I'm gonna have to change.
We'll let the auto pick go. All right, you ready? So here's how this plays out. You ready?
Yeah.
Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2, JJ McCarthy 3, Malik Neighbors to the Cardinals at 4, Marvin Harrison to the Chargers at 5, Drake May 6, Brock Bauer 7, Joe Alt to the Falcons 8, Roma Doomsday to the Bears, Dallas Turner to the Jets.
Good pick.
Olame Fasanu to the Vikings. J.C. Latham to the Raiders. Jared Verse, Quinion Mitchell at 15. Troy Fananu at 16. Here's your guy, Leitu at 17. Terrion Arnold, Byron Murphy, Cooper DeJean at 20, and Brian Thomas at 21. All right, so Joe, here are the guys that you got on the board. Is there a position of need? Is there a guy that you're going, this is a guy I got to have?
Oh man, those are the options there on the right.
So I listen. I can search. I can search by position. Joe, who you
No,
tell me who
what you're doing. That's best players available, right?
these are best players available, right?
Okay. Who's below Wiggins here?
All right. So Nate Wiggins, Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Kool-Aid too. Man. Well, for me, just looking at the board.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know just from they've had previous meetings and they loved him at the combine and they've talked to him before. It was Jackson Powers Johnson. But that becomes a question too of, are they sold on Steen? Does Jurgens take Steen's spot and they draft Powers and then Steen comes off the bench? I mean, there's so many. I mean, for me, it's between Kool-Aid and Wiggins because of what I've heard between both of these guys. They're, like you said, their measurables, what they've done on their teams against top competition. The one knock that I did hear about Wiggins is he's not a very good tackler. So, but if I would be happy with either one of those guys. I mean, I love Chop Robinson because he's a Penn State guy, but I just don't know. I mean, he's got the size and he's got the intangibles, but I like guys that just have the production matches it. And I don't think he just didn't have the numbers last year for me. And, as a former Penn Stater, I hate saying that because I mean, I love the guy and I want him on my team, but I just don't know at our pick that's the guy. So for me, it comes down to between Wiggins and Kool-Aid.
Yeah, to me that's kind of where when you look at the way that this particular draft played out and where the value is, the guys that are ahead of them, you're looking at defensive line, tackle, and wide receiver. Those would all be absolute luxury picks. To me, you'd have to pick that would be a who's higher on your board kind of pick. Right? Is Nate Wiggins higher? Is Kool-Aid higher? Are they one and the same? To me, that's the way. So, Joe, where are we playing? Where are we going? Do we just go with the cool name? Do we go Kool-Aid?
Oh, you gotta get. Hey, man, when somebody calls you Kool-Aid, you got it's just cool. It's cool with
Listen,
the
we gotta.
Cool with
all
the
right, so here. Let's look at the full results. So after our pick. After we picked Nate Wiggins, or we picked Kool-Aid, Nate Wiggins went next. And then Graham Barton, 24, Tyler Guyton, which is another guy. I heard Tim McManus talking about Tyler Guyton could be, the kid from Oklahoma. That could be a guy that's in play for the Eagles at 22. Chop Robinson ends up with Detroit at 29. The guy that to me, I would be okay if that's the way that it played out. The odds, Joe, you're right. You were talking earlier. The odds that this is something that they stay at and at 22, it wouldn't surprise me if they move back, collect picks, and then move back in to move up.
Right.
Could they do what they did the year that they drafted Devontae Smith, where they trade back and then they use those picks to trade back in to be able to get a guy that they really like. Let's look at those picks in it. Where are you looking in terms of those picks in the 50s?
Position wise?
Yeah, like if we're talking about those picks in the 50s, those where are you targeting? Are those where are you still looking defense?
I'm still going defense. Unless my guy on offense is still there in the second round, but I don't know if he's going to fall that far. Xavier Worthy from Texas.
Oh, you want to talk about a guy that can just turn and burn?
Yeah.
He might find himself in the Olympics this summer.
And there's a strong possibility.
Good Lord.
It's that's a position or a receiver of his caliber is like it's so boom or bust. It's so
I mean, the when you talk about a guy that's got big threat, big playability, right? A guy that just gives you, to me, I'm going to throw a comp at you. To me, he's got everything that I saw in Deshaun Jackson.
Absolutely.
Just a guy, the body type, but a guy that can just turn and burn and just go get the ball. That's a guy that, you can combine the speed and the ball catching ability. He's a guy that caught balls. He doesn't have a ton of drops, but a guy that you can definitely get in the second round. There's another guy that I'm looking at. The kid from Texas A&M, Edgerrin Cooper. That's another guy that just gives them would be one of a handful of guys at the linebacker spot that I would be really, really okay with them in terms of his athleticism, his ability to be able to get from sideline to sideline, and be a difference maker in the middle of that defense.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't go wrong with Cooper. I mean, his production, his playmaking ability. He's a ball hawk. I mean, his college resume speaks for itself. So it's a position that absolutely they need, because you don't know about Nakobe Dean. Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be what you thought he was going to be? Because small sample size that we did have of him, it wasn't great. So that still remains to be seen. So it's definitely a position that we need to consider. So I'm okay with them drafting all defense. Really, get a receiver late in one of the later rounds or tight end in one of the later rounds. But they really need to get guys that can get on the field and make an impact right away, because the signing of Bryce Huff was a really good signing by the Eagles, but it still remains to be seen that is he primed, and is he going to hold up? Is he going to be ready to be a starter if that's what they're expecting out of him? So I mean, his production speaks for itself. I mean, he's physically gifted, he's a playmaker, but he did that 50% of the time. So how does that translate to this defense with Fangio and this year? So you can never have too many good players at key positions. So I'm my guy. It's D end. For me, it's D end and corner are top two for me. Linebacker, obviously, but the secondary, it's like Bradbury. What are you going to get out of Bradbury? You're almost forced to play him. Is he going to play like he did last year? Is he going to be any better than last year?
Yeah.
And Slay too. Slay's still very productive and still a very good corner, but these guys they're getting old and gonna have to. They got to figure things out for the very, very near future.
I agree. Talk about a guy that could also end up in the middle of this defense, in a guy that would ultimately allow a handful of us to knock the dust off a former jersey. The thoughts of a guy that we've talked about before, but the thoughts of bringing in a guy like Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Obviously he's you're talking about a guy who's probably going to get picked, the third round and on. He looks like he's a day 3, third round, fourth round pick. The way that you see him play and the aggressive nature that you see, and obviously the comparisons with his dad, it would be a really cool story. I think anything before the third round might be a reach, but he's a guy that I would have a ton of interest in. Set the last name aside. When you look at his play at Clemson, his ability to be able to get sideline to sideline, making plays in the backfield, his ability to be able to read defenses, get downhill. He and Edgerrin Cooper are guys that I would look, because I don't think that they're convinced that Nakobe Dean is going to be a productive player on this roster, because he can't stay on the field. You look at, they bring in Devin White on the 1-year deal. I think they're going to look to try to upgrade that position through the draft, albeit in a later round pick. But I think that's another guy that they go and take a look at.
Absolutely. What's the latest on? Is that Cunningham still a free agent? Is he under?
As far as I know, I can look it up.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him back on a cheap 1-year deal for depth and camp a camp battle. I mean, we've seen him do really well as a starter. I mean, yeah, he's definitely had his moments, but compared to some of these other guys that we've had on the team or who have played and started, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him back on.
Yeah, no, he's an unrestricted free agent. He had his base salary last year of $1 million. So
I mean, I would totally be okay with that, to push these other guys and possibly make the roster again. But they have to address it in the draft. And those two guys that we talked about are right at the top of the list for me.
Joe, you got anybody? You got any sleepers? You got a guy that about that no one else knows about?
I wish I wish I was that clever now.
I got a guy for you, Joe.
What do you got?
I got a guy for you. I'm gonna pull it up. I'm going, Joe, to this is a place that is well, let's just say it's near and dear to our hearts, because we're talking about a guy who is going to come through the player pathway, similar to Jordan Mailata. Talking about a guy who doesn't have a whole lot of football experience, but is just an enormous human. And I feel like this guy, Byron Matos, who has never played a football game in his life, has had some NFL pre-draft visits. He's had 11 other teams go to those meetings. I guarantee you that Jeff Stoutland, if this guy
chomping at the bit
is chomping at the bit to be the next Stoutland U standout, this guy, Byron Matos, stands 6'7", 313 pounds. So just a huge human. He's got the arms, the arm span is 35 and a quarter. He's a guy born in the Dominican Republic and is entering this NFL draft through the player pathway program. Wow. If you got a 7th round pick to burn,
sure,
and he's still sitting on the board,
yeah,
burn that. Burn it. Turn it and burn it. Run that ticket up, because the way that you've seen them be successful with player development, especially with guys at that position in that locker room. Now, listen, Joe, if I'm sitting here in my upstairs spare bedroom talking about this guy, I guarantee you that he's on some teams' boards. But he's just the size alone is a guy that, to me, would be way worth going in and burning a 2nd round pick or a seventh round pick.
Sure.
You spent 7th round picks on punters before.
Punters or some other nobodies, I mean.
And listen, now that you know what Jordan Mailata what he's been able to turn into.
Yeah, as long as Stoutland's here, hey, I'll run up with you and we'll hand in the ballot together.
I love it.
There's another guy too that that kind of just pops into my head now that
Okay.
I have one eye open tonight. Lad McConkey,
Oh, okay.
receiver from Georgia.
Okay. Yeah,
His
you're
dad,
talking about a guy who probably is going to go
probably third or fourth.
second, probably end of the second, early third round pick.
Yeah, I mean if he's on the board in the third round, because he can I think mainly a slot guy, but I mean he's got the bloodline. I'm pretty sure his dad was Phil, who played for the Giants
Mm-hmm.
back in the 80s and 90s, and he was very productive at Georgia. Very very good numbers. Very very productive. Stayed on the field. Um, really good possession receiver. So just little things that I've seen on him.
Mm-hmm.
He's got good measurables and good production. So if he's there in the third round, I would I'd give him a shot.
Oh, I'm 100% with you. He's a guy I would absolutely take a look at, especially in the position that they're in, where they have the ability to be able to add. If you can add luxury at that spot, and you can add value to a position that you can only just create more depth, I'm all for it. I have no
Right.
the way that they have drafted in the last couple of years and the success, and you see now the players. Please don't mistake anybody the ability for these players that are getting drafted to not be aware of the guys that are getting these extensions and the teams that are giving the extensions, because you're looking at opportunities where these guys know they go and they play well. They know that they know that the Eagles will take care of their own.
Absolutely.
Oh, all right, Joe. And what do we got on our way out the door? This draft will be a success if
The Eagles select a player in the first round who can play in game one.
okay. So in your mind, all we need is that one guy.
Not one guy, but
Nah, I know. I'm just playing with you, Joe. I'm just playing.
it's look at our record of drafting in the first round. Derek Barnett. You have Jalen Rager. It really is. It's a crapshoot. And I really hope that Howie's done his homework, because Howie is so boom and bust. Look at we got Jordan Davis and Nolan Smith. The jury's still out. Jordan Davis is a good player, but is he a primarily run stopper? Because from what we've seen, he gives you no pass rush ability. And is he going to be able to get into top game shape to be able to last the whole season? And we're gonna find that out this year, because this is really the last year that you can, for me, where you can ride him as your guy. That top 15 pick. You have to see what you have with him. Is he an every down player? Can he consistently stop the run and learn techniques to rush the quarterback and the conditioning? I mean, he's got to come into camp. He's got to be in shape. He's got to be in shape. And now that you've added Fangio, you've got your defensive coaching set up and lined up with Fangio. You're hoping that he can put him and prime him to be ready to unleash him. Why did he fall to 30? Is this why he fell to 30? Is he kind of like that linebacker? He's a DN. We don't really know what he is. He's super athletic, he's super talented, but it all comes down to production.
I think this draft will be a success if the guys that they need to get. I'm going to extend what you're saying, Joe. I think that they need to get on the field contributions from the first 3 picks in whatever positions they're in. They need to, if it's O-line, it's got to be a starter. If it's corner, if it's linebacker, they're not drafting a linebacker in the first round, right? But whatever it is, the guys that they pick, those first 3 picks, they're going to get 3 of the top 55 guys. Those guys have to contribute this year. They have to put you in a position. And I know that's kind of hard to say because you're talking about a team that's got Super Bowl aspirations, but they have to be guys that are going to contribute day one, that they're going to be on the field. Because I think you don't have the luxury now as you start to hand out these extensions, right? And Howie's going to be wildly creative with the salary cap. You're going to look at guys that have to get they have to get these contributions from this team. Joe, last question for you. This draft is a disaster if
they draft a guy that can't get on the field. They draft a guy that can't start. They are sold on a particular guy at a certain position, and he pulls a Danny Watkins on him, or he's just not. It doesn't translate to the NFL. Like he's really good in college. He's got all these stats and he's super productive, but then he doesn't show that flash. He doesn't show that the ability to get on the field and stay on the field come game 1 or game 2, whatever game it is. Whenever he's put into the starting lineup, he doesn't have it. It doesn't show you that flash. Or it doesn't show you the ability to be the guy.
I think if any of those guys, this is a complete disaster. If any of those first 3 picks are wild reaches, and when I say wild reach, like if you give up a lot of draft capital to move up in that first round, and then the guy that you take is a guy that pretty much is a guy that you're just in love with and you didn't want to wait for, that you could have sat and got at 22. That to me is if you start spending draft capital for a guy that you're just in love with, that ends up being a luxury pick. Now, if it's a guy that you're going to turn and burn into a day 1 starter, then maybe it's worth spending the draft capital on. But we shall see, Joe. On the way out, Joe, do they draft a quarterback?
A quarterback?
Do the Eagles draft a quarterback in this draft?
Wow. I wouldn't put it past them, man. This is a quarterback factory.
Right? Like, and Joe, I mean, listen, look at the Eagles depth chart, right? You're not talking about a well-established room, right? The guys behind Jalen Hurts are Kenny Pickett, Tanner McKee, and Will Grier.
Yeah.
So
Will Grier doesn't, unless the practice squad guy, he's out. He's out. I mean, you don't know what you have in Kenny Pickett yet, and you don't know what you have in Tanner McKee. For all we know, Tanner McKee could beat up Kenny Pickett and be the backup. I mean, he showed flashes, and he showed that he could lead the offense in training camp last year. So, I mean, but it's Howie.
Yeah,
Howie. There might be a guy that they really like, or they did their homework on, and he falls into the 5th or 6th round, and how he's sitting there,
Mhm.
he just
Yeah. Hmm.
I would
Yeah. Listen,
I can't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked.
it
But
wouldn't surprise me.
they took
Like,
Jalen in the 2nd round.
yeah, I know. I know. Listen,
They took
the trade up, the trade down is absolutely a place, but like the 20s, I think, we got our guys from the Philly Sports Love and Pain show checking in. You got that 20. That's how we sweet spot though. That's a place where he's established a lot of credibility for this team. The quarterback that I'm going to tell you, Joe, to keep in your back pocket for at the end of this draft. Talking about a guy from Tennessee. You remember Joe Milton from Saturdays in the SEC?
Yeah.
Played quarterback at Tennessee. The measurables, again, this is something that I'm dialed in on. 6'5", 235. So he's got the measurables, Joe.
Yeah.
Put him on the practice squad, let him develop. That could turn in. You're going to let Kenny Pickett be your underpaid, small hands, tiny hand quarterback.
Tiny hand.
You listen. You never know. The draft stuff is fun. Listen, next week, we'll be back breaking down all the guys they did pick. The way that I'm sure we'll talk about how the draft played out. I'm sure it'll be wild to see how that plays out. Joe, what do you got? Final thoughts on the way out the door?
Final thoughts. Yeah, just enjoy the draft. I mean, obviously, we're 365, 24/7 Eagles fans, but it's free agency. Then you have the draft. I mean, it's a fun time. It's really fun to see these guys get an opportunity to prove themselves with whatever team they get selected by, whether it's the 1st round, the 5th round, or the 7th round. Mr. Irrelevant, but it's cool. It's cool to see this for all these teams. Especially our team. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. There's going to be a lot of fireworks. Some of these 1st round teams that are going to be taking quarterbacks are definitely going to be reaching, and I see a lot of these guys falling on a lot of these teams are going to be falling on their face because they're the guys that they select they're just not that good. The quarterback group this year is it's so watered down. Especially with a guy like JJ McCarthy, but it's fun. You love the fun of it, the excitement of it, and the whole shebang. And they've drawn it out now. No, it's what, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday now. What are you
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. But it's definitely a spectacle, and watching these jostle for position, and it's just the trade and the pick is in, and it's like, what's your team gonna do, and it's gonna be fun to see what the Eagles wind up doing, because how he's always got something up his sleeve.
Oh yeah, I think the thing for me, Joe, I love seeing the guys on their journey, right? The guys that have worked their whole lives to get to this point. That this is like the payoff for all the hard work and the sacrifices that they've made, and to see that this day could potentially change generations of their families is just a really cool thing to see. So just excited for that next chapter for them, and the next chapter for the Birds, and see what guys they bring in, and try to get this train rolling, and end up, I don't know where the next Super Bowl is. New Orleans? Is it New Orleans next year?
I think it is.
Wherever it is. But excited to try to get onto that journey. So with that, on the way out the door, listen, go check out all of our stuff. Check out all the stuff in the link tree, and you can go find our sponsors. Go check those guys out. We've got a lot of really cool cool connections with some businesses that are local. So on the way out the door, Joe, you want to tell you want to tell everybody where they can go?
I'll do my best, Rich.
There you go.
Rich, this is gonna suck. Nobody can replace you, Rich. What the fuck? You messed around, you stuck around, you fucked around, and you found out. Fuck you, Spike Eskin. Fuck you, refs up in New York last night for fucking the Sixers. Thanks a lot. Fuck you, Davion Taylor. Fuck you, Deshaun Watson. Do you have any, Don?
Well, as always, Joe, the Cowboys can get the double bird on the way out the door. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
E-A-T-L-E